Hello and welcome back. This is Rachel with the Shades of Orange, and today I want to do another round of if you like this horror book, then you should read that. I did a video similar to this a little ways back, so I will link to that at the end. But it's just like what it sounds. I'm going to be talking about some popular horror books, and if you have read those, I'm going to give you recommendations for books that I think are similar in terms of theme or plot or whatever the case is. I'm going to be listing the more popular book first, but of course, if you have not read the first book, but you have read the second, the recommendations totally work in reverse. All that being said, let's get started. First, I want to talk about Horror Store by Grady Hendrix, which is a story of a group of employees working in a Scandinavian furniture store, which is definitely not supposed to be IKEA, but is kind of like it, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And strange things are happening at night. They are waking up and coming to the store to find that things are messed up and dirty. And so a group of employees are tasked with going in at night to investigate what is happening. And they, of course, discover that some horrible things are happening at night, and the story goes from there. Now, I absolutely love this one. Of course, it is set up like an IKEA catalog and is just a very iconic modern horror book. So if you enjoyed that one, I would then recommend reading Finna by Nino Sapri. And this one is technically more of a science fiction horror, so it is lighter on the horror elements, but they definitely are still there. This is a novella that follows a group of employees that also work at a Scandinavian furniture store. At the beginning of the story, an old woman goes missing, and so the store has a meeting where they explain that their store is actually connected to other stores and other universes through these multi-dimensional portals. And a group of employees, or rather a pair of them, are tasked to go into these portals and find the woman. This story, like the other one, is definitely focused on the fact that these employees are just working really crummy retail jobs. It pokes a lot of fun at IKEA-like businesses, but at the same time, this one has a lot of heart. There is focus on the relationship between the main character and the person that they've broken up with. This one also has an element of gender queer diversity in it, and it definitely reminded me of Horror Store when I read it. Very much its own story, but if you like one, you should definitely check out the other. They are both so much fun, and yeah, if you've ever had to work a crappy retail job, these books are definitely ones that you should read. Now, if you've read Disappearance at Devil's Rock by Paul Tremblay, which is a story of a young boy that goes missing, and the story is told from the perspective of his family members that are trying to track down what has happened to him, and it's a bit more of a mystery than some of the other horror books I want to talk about. But if you've read that one and are looking for something similar, I would recommend Here There Are Monsters by Amalinda Berube. And this is another story with a similar plot, which is why the two books kind of blended together in my mind, because this follows a young girl that goes missing, and the story is told from her sister's perspective as well. You get to see parts of her parents as they try to figure out what is happening. The police get involved. And if you like a horror story which has the disappearance of a young teenager at the center of it, both of these books will have that appeal. The girl in Berube's story is a little bit younger. She's more preteen, but you very much get that aspect of teenagers acting like real teenagers that focus on a more young adult feel. And I will say that while Disappearance at Devil's Rock reads a little bit more like a mystery, the supernatural or horror elements of the book are much more subtle and ambiguous. If you want a story that goes to more obvious supernatural or almost fantastical places, then I definitely recommend this other one, because it almost goes into the realm of magical realism and it gets very fantastical towards the end. So I'll say if you want to try the same story twice but have it go in very different directions with very different endings, then this might be a pairing for you. Next, let's go with a really classic horror pairing, but I have to mention it just in case you have not read both books. So I want to talk about The Ruin by Scott Smith, which I did include in my last If You Like This video, but I have a different pairing to talk about. This book is about a group of young college students that decide to go party in Mexico at a resort. They end up wandering away from that safety and end up in some ruins, and they're forced into a situation where it becomes a survival story where they have to make some terrible choices, and there are definitely moments of body horror, which you know I love. It's a quite classic one, and I've just really enjoyed this one. So if you have already read The Ruins, I would recommend checking out The Troop by Nick Cutter, another really popular one, but again, not everyone has read every horror book, so I didn't want to avoid doing this pairing. And that, of course, is about a troop of Boy Scouts that is taking place in the PEI area of Canada. They go on this scouting mission overnight, and they wander across this man who is insatiably hungry. And when they try to help him, things go wrong. And again, the story devolves into a survival story. And what I like about both these books is the fact that you have a group of people. In the one, it's more a group of older college students, while the Boy Scouts, of course, are more younger children. But in both cases, you get to see group dynamics breaking down, which is one of my favorite things about survival stories. I love when you get to see things crumbling and the lengths that people go to take care of themselves, the backstabbing, all of that good stuff. And both books definitely have some gross out moments with some body horror. So if that is up your alley, you should definitely check out both books. If you've read The Troop but have not yet read The Ruins, rectify that immediately. They are both so much fun. And I think most people will agree that they really do fit well together. While the plots are somewhat different, I find consistently that honestly, if you like one, you are almost guaranteed to like the other. I don't know a lot of people that like one and dislike the other. Of course, let me know in the comments if you're the exception to that rule. Okay, let's talk about The Switch House by Tim Meyer, which is a novella that is about a couple that are dealing with some grief and decide to deal with it by going on a reality TV show where they go and switch houses with someone else. The story actually starts after the house swap has happened and they are now returning home. And the woman just feels like something is not quite right in their house. And she begins to track down footage of the reality TV show and finds out that the woman was doing some really weird things in her house. And she now worries that there is some kind of presence that is staying with them. And if that premise sounds good to you and you're looking for something else, I would also recommend The Apartment by S.L. Gray. And this is about a couple that are dealing with grief and the trauma that came with having a home invasion. And afterwards, they just don't feel comfortable in their house. So with the nudging of their friends, they decide to go and vacation in Paris. However, since they don't have the money to stay at a hotel, they decide to try a house swapping site where they are going to live in the home of someone from Paris, and that person will then go live in their house. However, when they get to the place, they find out that the home that they are staying in isn't quite as advertised. It's very dingy, very dark, and just strange. The apartment building itself is quite empty, and it just doesn't seem right. They start to find weird things around the apartment, and the people that were supposed to live in their place haven't showed up. So this one has a really interesting premise. I like them both for different reasons. I will say that I like the fact that the apartment actually has a focus on the time where you get to see the house swap happening, as opposed to Switch House, where you get to kind of find out after the fact what happened. So it kind of has a different focus in terms of current versus past flashbacks. But regardless, they both had some really fun twists on the house swapping genre as a medium. And I'm someone who has always been terrified of the concept of staying in someone else's house, like doing an Airbnb, all of that. But regardless, it made these books a lot of fun. So again, if you want to kind of see a similar plot, but one that goes to very different places, the books go in totally different directions, I'll say The Switch House is a little bit more fun, while The Apartment deals a lot more with things like grief and a lot more emotional depth to the book with some very unlikable characters. But if either one sounds up your alley and you haven't read the other one, I definitely, of course, recommend those two as a pair. Finally, if you are a fan of Hex by Thomas Oldhovelt, which is a story of a small town where there is a witch and they are trying to keep her secret. So there are really strict rules around the town about not talking about her and controlling all forms of social media. And because of this, there is a lot of strain between the older generation and the younger ones. And eventually, as you can suspect, the younger people decide that they are tired of following the rules and they begin to expose the town to some danger, and things go banana crazy from there. Now, if you're a fan of this book and have not yet read it, I would personally recommend checking out Clown in a Cornfield by Adam Caesar. This is about another small town. This one has a mascot named Friendo, which is a clown, and like in Hex, you find out that there's a lot of tension between the older generation and the newer one. There was a factory in this town that is closed down, and the older people blame the younger people for that. And so because of that, this is another book that just goes to some really crazy places. There is a lot of action in the second half of this one, just like in Hex. And the story basically goes nuts, and in a very good way. So if you're looking for a horror story with a lot of action and just the craziness that comes with small towns trying to control their secrets and what happens when resentment builds to the point of explosion, then I would definitely recommend reading this one. So that is it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it because it was so much fun to put together this list. If you haven't yet, remember to go and watch my first video of If You Like This, Try That. And if you enjoyed this enough, I could probably do round 3. As I was filming this, I started thinking of even more pairings that I could talk about, but I'm only gonna do it if I know you'll actually watch it. So give me a thumbs up and drop me a comment if you want to see round 3, because I would love to put together another list. This is just so much fun. And let me know what you think of my pairings. If you disagree, that's okay. Maybe you don't think that these books have anything in common, or maybe you have a different recommendation for a pairing that you think fits even better. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.